Joel Salatin comes back on the Sowing Prosperity podcast to help us navigate some food freedom, going through some of the issues we face around raw milk and other things like meat processing, local food freedom, choice. A lot is covered in this conversation. Joel, so good to be talking to you again, my friend. Recently, we had a situation where the Arkansas Department of Health came in because somebody filed a formal complaint that we were selling raw milk for pet consumption, and the complaintee was worried about public safety. And so the health department came in and they said, you got to get rid of it. You can't be selling raw milk, even though you have it labeled for pet consumption only. So as that played out, we've got a good following on social media, told what happened, and it just kind of blew up, way more in support than against, but the against was vicious, right? Like I was sharing white death and poisoning and killing everybody by being a retail outlet for raw milk. So with that, got with Mark McAfee, who is a dear friend, to walk through his thoughts with all of that. And then I wanted to talk to you. I think you're right up there with this experience to give us some guidance and some feedback and see how do we fix this this thing we're up against.
Well, I expect. Well, what did Mark's? I mean, Mark is way more knowledgeable in that raw milk space than I am. I'm knowledgeable in the circumvention space. He has opted to occupy the compliance space, and his scale has allowed him to occupy the compliance space. I don't know how your interchange went, but I'm guessing that's kind of the way it went. That if you had 3,000 dairy cows, you could probably comply with all the stainless steel gadgetry and licenses and thermometers too. But without 3,000 cows, it becomes scale prejudicial.
And Mark had amazing feedback, and he's so positive and willing to make things work. And he reached out to the health department in Arkansas on behalf of trying to figure out what is the appropriate labeling for pet food. What do we do? And man, they went cold. They just quit responding. So that was interesting for me. But it was a good one. But what I really wanted is, like, you wrote the book a while back of Everything I Want to Do is Illegal. And to me, it's so much more than raw milk. What I want to hit on is about the control. It's about the freedom. Why in the world do we have a crusade against raw milk? Not for raw milk's sake, just for what is going on. Why can an adult American not freely buy whatever food they want? And that's really the issue that I want to kind of hash out.
Well, the reason to do a short answer, so we can kind of look around at nuances, just to get the conversation moving quickly. The short answer is that the majority of Americans do not trust business, and they only believe that the government can ensure safety. That there's no other mechanism to ensure safety than the government. And so, I have plenty of friends that say, well, it's these big corporations, they want to shove out the little guy, blah, blah, blah. No. That's not the case. Certainly not in this case. Generally these food regulations like this are because the majority of Americans have bought they've drunk the Kool-Aid, not the raw milk. They've drunk the Kool-Aid, that the only way to have the food you're going to eat be safe it requires a bureaucrat stamp. Now, the the justification, how does a society, so then the obvious question is, what if I want to hurt myself? What if I don't care about safety? Should I not be able to have, I'm going to use a powerful phrase here, freedom of choice? Freedom of choice to hurt myself? I mean, if I want to smoke a cigarette, if I want to get drunk, if I, you know, where does my ability to hurt myself stop? And so that then leads to the fact that right now in our culture, the politics of our culture is that society owns me. Society owns my body. So we start hearing things like, you have a right to health care. You have a right to food. You have a right to live in a house. You have a right to an education. And what we've done is we've cheapened true rights, and we've extended them to things that cost somebody else in order for me to get them. That's the difference between a human right and a non-human right. A human right, when the founders of our country wrote the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, none of those things costs anybody. The fact that I'm alive does not cost you anything. The fact that I have freedom to speak or to assemble, to worship, my right for that does not cost you anything. But as soon as we say I have a right to health, I have a right to safety, I have a right to education, those things all require somebody else to pay for it if I can't get it myself. If I can't get it myself, somebody else has to pay for it. And so healthcare, universal healthcare, Obamacare, if you will, more than anything else, really set the mental worldview stage for me seeing your decisions as an asset or a liability to me. In other words, if you want to go hurt yourself and rank up a bunch of medical bills, hey, go at it. But as soon as I'm paying for your health care, now suddenly your freedom to choose impinges on my my economics, my wealth. And so if you make what I would consider risky decisions to eat homemade charcuterie, drink raw milk, and some neighbor's chicken pot pie, okay, if you make that what I consider a very risky health decision, suddenly it's not just you making a decision for yourself. That decision now affects me, because if you get sick, healthcare says I've got to help pay for you. And so I now have a philosophical justification for a bureaucratic oversight and intervention in those kind of decisions. I hope that helps to frame it and make sense. And so, because you're asking, why would somebody care if I drink raw milk? Why would somebody care? Well, the reason they care is because they see you engaging in risky behavior that will raise their tax burden, because now society has determined health is a human right, and that has moved your health not into just your decision. Your decision about your health now affects me, affects my tax burden, affects what I'm doing, society as a whole. And and
No,
and
that's a really interesting perspective.
and this is the why. So until we can extract the societal burden, until we can extract the yeah the the imperative for society to pick up the tab for your risky decisions, we can't achieve freedom. We can't achieve liberty because people are always going to be protecting. I want to protect my tax bite. I want to protect my wealth, and so I have an inherent and justifiable, absolutely justifiable reason to be able to intervene in your decision making process.
With that frame, we are facing an absolute chronic disease epidemic, right? Like we have a very, very sick society, and based on the argument that you just came with, that has such a economic burden on all Americans, right? Based on the chronic disease epidemic and the extremely high cost of health care. So
Yeah.
to me, the the bang for your buck is to get healthy. And as I've spent the last 5 years relentlessly trying to understand, since my son was diagnosed with cancer, understand health, understand cancer, understand metabolic diseases, and the mitochondrial issues that we are facing. It seems, Joel, that the solution to all this really is a decentralized approach. It is decentralized in following nature, which is the ultimate decentralized system. It's seasonal. And so going back to that, the local, seasonal, natural lifestyle and way of eating seems to address the chronic disease that is costing us the most money. Am I looking at that in a way that makes sense to you? Does that is something that you
Okay.
can get
So
behind?
no, I totally agree with you, which is why the single most valuable thing that a culture can do, that a society can do, is preserve the lunatic fringe. The lunatic fringe is where innovation comes from. The folks that we haven't done this before, and that's where all the innovation, creation, all that comes in a society. And so Peter Bain, when he was writing in his urban permaculture book, he said societal. This is such a profound statement. He said the most important thing for societies and epochal change to preserve is the freedom to experiment on the edges of edges of acceptability. That's a profound statement. In other words, I think you and I would agree that America right now, where we are, yeah, you said we're in a health crisis. I mean, America leads the world right now in non-infectious morbidity. You know, cancer, heart disease, obesity, diabetes. We're number one in the world in those things, and and the answers to those things are not going to come from the perpetrators of these problems. It's going to come from people like you and me that completely disentangle from the system that got us here and turns 180 degrees the other direction. But if 180 degrees the other direction is perceived by the system as being hurtful to the system, then the system tries to it tries to reel us in. Okay, it's trying. No, you got to come back and play the game like we want to play. You got to play the game like we want it played. And so uh, I couldn't agree with you more. This is why experimentation is so critical, and why the most important freedom to preserve is the freedom to opt out of the system. You know, what I mean, what if I want to have a hospital? What if I want to have a hospital that does whatever, acupuncture, bee sting therapy, and what, raw milk? Uh, um, you don't have to come to my hospital, and if I don't like you, I don't have to serve you. It's amazing how, and I don't want to get too far off the path here, but it's amazing how in a time when so many people are advocating for my body, my freedom, my choice, we don't seem at all uh, concerned about that. I don't have the choice what to feed my own personal microbiome. Um, I mean, certainly my own personal microbiome is as valuable as a growing baby inside of me. And so if I've got a choice for one, I should have the choice for other. But somehow our society has completely missed it. I'll tell you a story. I was up speaking just to show you where we are in our culture. I was up, I'll tell you two real quick ones. I was up speaking at a university in Pennsylvania a few years back, shortly after Obamacare went in. So this was several years back. And I had just gone into Washington, D.C. on the metro to do some sort of a congressional hearing or something. And I get on the metro, and a guy next stop gets on across the aisle from me. He weighs 400 pounds. He's got a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, a big liter bottle of like Mr. Pibb or Coca-Cola or something, a great big half bushel basket full of potato chips. And he sits down, and I'm looking over, and I'm thinking, all right, and I'm responsible for his health, you know. And so the next week I went up and I spoke at this college. I had this, room full of college students, and during Q&A, it just kind of organically led me to this. And so, I'm going to ask you all a question. So I told him this story about this guy that got on a metro, blah, blah, blah. I said, I want one of you young people, one of you college students to tell me. And of course, they all thought Obamacare was the best thing in the world. Wow, finally people are going to get, taken care of. I said, I want one of you to tell me why I'm responsible for that guy's health. I mean, nobody's putting a gun to his head saying, you've got to drink a liter of Coke, or you've got to smoke a cigarette, or you've got to be 400 pounds. And I said, I want somebody here to tell me why I'm responsible for his health care. The whole lecture hall, the whole room just fell silent. And I just waited. I waited a minute. I waited 2 minutes. That's a long time to sit and, look at each other in a room. Finally, this one girl sitting on the second row, she raised her hand and said, "Yes, ma'am, what?" And she said, "Because your generation made him do that." Yeah. Yeah. How you like that? As they say, how you like them apples? In other words, she's blaming me for that guy's decisions. Well, then I was out at a college in California, same situation, big lecture hall full of students. And we got started down this pathway, and just one thing led to another. I said, I'm going to ask you all a question. How many of you think that in order to eat a carrot out of your own garden, there should be a government agent that approves, that checks it for safety before you can eat that carrot from your own garden? Logan, 1/3 of the hands went up.
No.
1/3. I mean, it would have been atrocious if 2 hands went up, but 1/3 of the hands, it wasn't half, but 1/3 of the hands of the 300 college students went up. That you couldn't eat, they believed you should not be able to eat a carrot out of your own garden without a government agent stamping safety. And that's why I'm quick to say, this is not big corporations trying to squelch little guys. This is not, no, it's the American people who have bought this idea that the only way to have safety is for a government agent to make the decision on what is safety. And and I know safety is very subjective. I think people engage in risky behavior every day. I don't bungee jump, okay? But I don't care if you bungee jump, all right? If you want a bungee jump, it's fine with me. But don't ask me to pay your hospital bill if the bungee breaks and you break your neck, okay? Um,
Yeah.
and so, we engage in all sorts of risky behavior, and it's that risky behavior that that preserves the freedom to make decisions for our own bodies. And
Yeah.
so this is what we've come to as a culture. And so I look around and I look at people and I say, yeah, we did this to ourselves. It wasn't Monsanto, it wasn't Tyson, it wasn't the dairy lobby. It was us. We did it to ourselves by demanding government make our decisions for us.
The last time that we talked, you gave the analogy of a front porch and having a wasp nest there. And when you open the door, all the wasps kind of go on alert. And that being how, society feels like something's up, right? And so to that point, we have been fed a bill of goods that just isn't so, right? Like you think about the food guide pyramid, that is atrocious what has happened.
Yes.
The
Yes.
war on saturated fat. And so like I can almost understand in a way her argument of you did this, not you specifically, but the future
Yeah. Yeah.
generations, the ones that hold the information, right? Because even me, Joel, this wasn't about raw milk for me. I never cared really about raw milk one way or another. It was about that freedom to choose that has led me down a rabbit trail of how controlled we are. And so I can't argue with what you're saying, but I almost think that we're at a disadvantage because we are actually getting hit by both sides. So let me give you an example of why I think we're getting hit by both sides with Arkansas legislation. So we had raw milk be legalized in 2013. The caveats were the farmer could only produce 500 gallons a month and that the consumer had to go directly to the farm to pick it up. There was no distribution, there was no off farm sales. So, what that did was it limited the scalability of the farmer and it also made it more difficult, right? It wasn't an efficient exchange for somebody to commit 2, 3, 4 hours of their day to go get milk.
Right.
That I was told, right, by one of the legislators there, it was to appease. Those legislations had nothing to do with public safety. They were to appease the corporations that were in the dairy around here. So
Oh,
go
certainly.
go
Yep.
into that a little bit of that because I really do. I think we've
Well,
got a
yeah.
full on crony capitalism, and a lot of the legislators are just bought and paid for. So
No.
what are
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
No question. So my thoughts. It's a great question, and you're teasing out a nuance. I think that's good to deal with, and that is that the initial request, whether it's something like this to legalize raw milk, or whether it's something to reduce choice, create another regulation because of food safety, though those are stimulated not by the industry. They're stimulated by individuals. People like you and me, we want raw milk legalized, okay? And then the consumer, the Ralph Naderites, the consumer advocacy groups on the other side, they want, they read, they find out that there's whatever, rat turds in the peanut butter in Georgia, and they're saying, hey, we need to have stricter laws about that. So whether it's coming from we need more regulation or we need more freedom, either one, here's the point. What's common about both of those things, from whatever road those are coming to the politicians, they come to the politicians who are then wined and dined and lobbied by the industry. So the industry, if it's for more regulation, the industry protects itself and makes the regulation friendlier to large scale operations, more difficult. I mean, for example, I'll give you an example. Um, Several years ago, there was numerous outbreaks of like salmonella in chicken, and so they wanted to require every chicken. Um, they wanted to require a salmonella test for on every day of processing on every slaughterhouse, anything that processed chickens in the U.S. had to pull one sample from the day's processing to, to pass the salmonella test. Okay. It sounds good. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. Let's have all these. Here's the problem. The test costs $1,000. Well, if you're Tyson and you're doing 300,000 chickens a day through a plant, $1,000 test from one chicken, you know, A, it's not very statistically important, and B, it's, you spend more on the electric bill to keep the water fountain cold, right? It's a spit in the ocean. But if you're somebody like me and we're only doing 300 chickens in a day, $1,000 test suddenly just added more than $3 a chicken, and suddenly we're priced out of the market because the overhead costs of that compliance is highly scale prejudicial. So so what happens is, regardless of which side it's coming from, the industry, this is where the industry enters in. The industry shepherds it, and the industry lobbyists and the collusion, we call it the rotating door, okay, the revolving door. All right, the powers that be. I mean, I've been in Richmond down here doing at legislative at hearings and stuff, and it's obscene, Logan. You go in there, and here are the elected officials. They're sitting up here at this oval table. Well, here's the Virginia Poultry Federation, the Corn Growers Association, the Virginia Beef Cattle Association. They're literally sitting at the front table while the rest of us peasants get called up and do our testimony. I mean, there's no shame. There's literally no shame. But all of those industry interests are protecting their interest to shepherd. And so, yes, when in 2013, when Arkansas legalized raw milk, they were all there to make sure that they gave as tiny a door crack as possible, and make it as difficult or tiny as possible. And so regardless of whether it's we want more regulation or we want more freedom, when that comes through the political funnel, it will be strained through the mesh of the corporate interest. And that's the truth. That's where we are.
When you were on Robert Kennedy Jr.'s podcast, y'all told a story about Smithville buying a Soviet Union processing facility in Poland, and how they utilized the regulations and the loopholes to destroy the abattoirs throughout the country and consolidate control. That was extremely eye-opening for me at for lack of a better term, the lawfare, regulation warfare that they do. Is it possible? Is it possible to have different rules and setups for industry and the local food system? Is there a way that they I mean, Joel, McDonald's just killed somebody with a Big Mac, right? Like that just happened with E. coli, and we're so like there's the scaling issue and cost of compliance you're talking about, but then there's a whole nother world that we're trying to cookie cutter regulate that it's not feasible. So
Listen, yeah, you are, man, you are right on this topic here. So right now, in America, there is a wonderful exemption for producing and processing your own poultry. It's called the Public Law 90-492. It's written PL 90-492. It's a federal law that was put in 1967, I think, that allowed 20,000 head of poultry per year. So it's just poultry. It doesn't say, chicken or turkey or duck. It just says poultry per year to be processed by the producer grower without inspection and sold to an end user. Now, an end user is a user. It's like a home, a restaurant, a deli, a cafeteria institution. In other words, it's going to go out of there in somebody's stomach. All right. As opposed to being on the shelf at Walmart where it's got to go to somebody's house and be cooked. That's not an end user. Walmart's not an end user. Now, the Walmart deli is an end user, okay? Because it doesn't need any more, whatever, cooking, doesn't need any more culinary hovering over, until it's eaten. And this exemption has enabled thousands of small, pastured poultry operations. In fact, I would say that this was the exemption that allowed me to start farming because I didn't have to invest in $1 million worth of licenses, stainless steel, concrete, all these things. You could just start at a very embryonic scale. So when Senator Rand Paul ran for the presidency, what was it in 2016 or something started? But before then, we're not that far away from DC, and so one of his top legislative aides was a customer of ours, and introduced him to us. He came down, spent a day at the farm, and he got totally into this idea, and he said, "Well, why can't this chicken thing has been working now since 1967, so we're what 40, 50." 60, we're almost 60 years into this. Nobody's gotten sick. Nobody died. There's been no problem at all in a completely, uninspected situation. So we have precedent. We have precedent here that at this scale, at this number, and at this kind of direct sale, in other words, you can't sell it to Walmart or Costco. You got to sell it to an end user. So it's a short relationship here. With all those stipulations, we have a precedent here that it actually works. And so he said, why couldn't we extend this to what's an equivalent amount of milk, an equivalent amount of sausage, an equivalent amount of beef? Or, okay, are you with me? Let's just itemize down. If it's worked so well in poultry, let's go down the rest. And then he got started with a presidential campaign and kind of lost interest in it, and it didn't go anywhere. But the idea is, we do have this very workable precedent that is a numerical. It is defined by number, which has to do with scale, and it's defined by sale type. Okay, so there's a restriction on the number and on the sale type, but 20,000 head of poultry is a lot of birds. That's enough to, that's a $500,000 business easily. And so the beauty is that it allows entrepreneurs to launch embryonically without all of the stipulations that, that become cheaper by the million. That's the idea.
So let me throw another little wrinkle. You go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So the remedy, the remedy can take many forms, and of course that's one. A form that I like and that Congressman Thomas Massey likes is actually a constitutional amendment. I can actually read it to you. I got it on my wall here. It says, the right of the people to grow food and to purchase food from the source of their choice shall not be infringed. Okay. And so what he's trying to do is, and we have one in Virginia going in, that the General Assembly shall make no law abridging the right of individuals to grow and prepare food. Um, Nor shall Congress limit the exchange of food between parties who mutually agree to accept liability. These are attempts out here that some of us are trying to put together to grant to us the right to make choice. A lot of people don't realize Americans don't have the choice, don't have food choice. We don't have food choice. And so the problem is that when a bureaucrat gets between, if I want to come and buy raw milk from you, and a bureaucrat says no, you can't, because there's no right to this, there's no right to food choice. Um, I I can't sue the government for violating my rights because I have no standing, because it's not a right that's bestowed upon me. And so these constitutional amendment ideas are to try to grant standing so that if my exercise of that right is infringed by a government agent, we can litigate for redress of
Yeah.
denying me my rights. See, your right to choose your food, that does not cost anybody anything any more than your right to worship or to speak, or to assemble. Uh, none of that costs anybody else anything. And freedom of food choice is a wonderful right. Freedom of it doesn't say it says freedom to purchase or acquire food. The freedom to acquire food. It doesn't say a guarantee to acquire food. It doesn't say if you're
Right.
hungry you have a right to food. No, because that costs somebody else. But the right to choose doesn't cost anybody.
I love that. I love that you brought up Massey's amendment. That was I needed to hear that. That was great. So let me add a little wrinkle in here. So I own a grocery store. I understand the local food system. I understand the agricultural production side of it, the aggregation, the logistics in storing, and rotating products, the retail, the display, the marketing, the customer service, the fulfillment, right? This entire food system. And this is why so many of the programs of establishing a solution for a food desert or going into these underserved areas and this stuff doesn't work because they don't have the whole system built out. So for me, I have the advantage of being able to market utilizing social media, utilizing what we do, and having a hub at which we can aggregate a wide range
Right.
of
Mhm.
products, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
the need for retail is extremely important in this system. Now, I also think you had brought up, Walmart and Costco as an example of being outside that loop. I think on the making a local food system work, you have got to have a mom and pop grocery store to be a part of it. Maybe not for everybody, right? Y'all have a certain model at which you do other means of deliveries and things, but you also have a storefront at which you help other farmers yourself, right?
Right. That's
So
exactly right.
can you go into how we can make a system work utilizing the retail? Because that's the big thing that we got in trouble with milk, right? We were selling milk that was a wholesale, partnership. We're missing a lot of people
Yeah.
that want this food if we don't have it all together.
Yes, right. And you were selling this milk at the grocery store?
Yes.
Yeah. As labeled
Labeled for pet
labeled for
consumption
pet
only.
food, not for human consumption. So so have you gotten counsel from Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund or anything? Have you gotten legal counsel on this? Well, you should. You should, because here's my um let me ask you this. Is anybody else in Arkansas currently selling raw milk as pet food?
Yeah.
And
I
they're
mean,
not being
Mark is in stores. That was the thing. Mark has raw farms in stores being sold right now, and that's why he reached out to the health department and said, "Tell me what the label has to be." Like we're already in stores in your state doing this, and they're in 40 states now, Joel. So what do we do? How is this right? Give me feedback, and then nothing.
Yeah. Well, because it gets really gets really dicey to regulate. The bureaucrats, they don't want to write all that stuff, and they don't understand it anyway, and they don't believe raw milk is safe anyway. It's just that Mark has been able to get all the proper stamps and the proper licenses, and and he's a big operator, big operation, and I'm not taking that away from him. I mean, man, he's a juggernaut. Okay, uh, but but he um you can't everybody can't play at that scale, and you can't
Right.
start at that scale. um he brought a lot of outside investment to his operation. Again, I'm not taking anything away. I'm just saying that if you don't preserve the freedom of an experimental prototype to access the market, then you cannot bring innovation to the marketplace. You just can't.
Right.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that the big companies today, Tyson, Purdue, Bob Evans restaurants, all these places started in the 1920s and 30s and 40s from the tailgate of a pickup truck before we had these overly aggressive regulations. And so my question is, well, where is tomorrow's innovator on today's pickup truck? They're they're scaled, they're regulated out of business. They're
Yes.
regulated so heavily that the infrastructure to comply with the regulations is so expensive that it makes the embryo too big to be birthed. And so the entrepreneurial dream doesn't get birthed. But I would go. What I have found over the years is that about half of what a government agent says is not true. They just make stuff up on the fly. I'm serious. They make stuff up on
No,
the fly,
no, you are.
and and um, and so just because they told you that it was not legal, um, they're very possibly they are not correct. They're not correct. And so here's a little piece of advice in dealing with the bureaucracy like that. Remember, these bureaucrats, they swagger in with what they think is the support of the state attorney general behind them. I mean, that's their assumption. Well, in military, in a war, if I'm a colonel and I'm going to surrender to the other side, I'm going to surrender my battalion to the other side. We're pinned down. We're going to all die. So I put up the white flag and we surrender. I don't surrender to a private. I ask for a colonel to surrender to. Like has to talk to like. And this is why Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund is so profoundly important, is because um, you talking to the state, to the bureaucracy, with all their big power of the attorney general behind them, uh, is like a peasant talking to a king. You don't have. It's not like talking to like. Let me give you an example. Several years ago, I mean, quite a few years ago, actually, I got a desperate call from one of our restaurants. The health department was just here. They threw out your eggs and said they were illegal to sell. And I said, give me the code they cited and the inspector name. And so he gave that to me. And I hung up with him and immediately called Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, talked to Pete Kennedy. He crafted a letter, sent it to the health department, And in 48 hours, we had a letter from them in writing apologizing that they had overstepped their bounds. The eggs were absolutely legal and they had overstepped their bounds and they were wrong. Now, I want to ask you, if I had written that letter, dumb farmer Joel, right? If I had written that letter, how long do you think it would have taken me to get that kind of response from the state? The fact that an attorney wrote the letter, he knew what the law was, and he was like talking to like, suddenly they walked with less swagger. And so, look, I don't know if you like attorneys any more than I do in general, but there are some really, really good ones. And the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund has some really, really good ones. And I would reach out to them immediately and say, "Here's what happened. Well, pay your dues first. Join. Tell them I told you to join." And then say, "Look, here's the situation. Is this actually true?" Or I could hook you directly up with Pete Kennedy. The point is, this is the life these guys live in. These guys live in the food liberty space. If you go down to your local, attorney downtown, he's going to charge you $10,000 just to do research before he ever comes up to whether his argument. These guys I'm talking about, they're in this space. They live in this space every day. It's modeled after the Homeschool Legal Defense Association that Mike Ferris started back, 30 years ago, that actually gave uh, empowered families. When a state agent came in and said you can't homeschool, you had a 24/7 hotline that you could call and get real time legal counsel on whatever the charge was. And so that's where we are with these folks, and they love it, they live it, they know what the rules and the laws are, and they can give you in 5 minutes. They could tell you if the state overstepped their authority or did not overstep their authority. And I know, I mean, the pet food loophole is being used now all over the country. And so it is now getting a bigger target on its back. And it's going to take a few wins to tell the state to back off. There's this ongoing cat and mouse game, between the regulators and the freedom lovers, or the I call it the choice the choice crowd, versus the non-choice crowd. Boy, that gets pretty political, doesn't it?
It does.
And we have to stand our ground. I mean, I could give you a lot more stories about the success of circumventive efforts, but believe me, there's a lot of potential out there in circumvention.
Well, thank you for the guidance and wisdom. That was something else that really showed when spoke to Mark about this as well. Is just y'all's experience and just way of looking at thing is so valuable. As the Bible says, with many counselors, plans
Yeah,
succeed. So
yeah.
I do sincerely appreciate you, my friend. One more thing, I want to reemphasize and get your take on, because there are a few uh, bills supposedly going to be put out on January to lessen regulations or change regulations around raw milk. But to me, if it doesn't include this retail collaboration, we've really missed the point. And Joel, I say that because we have a lot of people that come through the store, that come through the market, and we've been able to put literally millions of dollars into farmers and artisans back into the community, help with marketing, help with labeling, help with different little taste
Oh,
changes, just all kinds of stuff, right?
listen,
It's
I'd halfway give my eye teeth to have a grocery like you near us. The closest one to us is 100 miles away from us, and we do supply them some things, and but yeah, a true localized, local source, local themed. We'll just say local themed. I mean, sure, you buy
Yeah.
coffee and
Right.
bananas and things like that, but a local themed place that really gets it, that really promotes that, is a godsend, not only to the consuming public, but to the farmers that are desperate for an outlet for what they produce. So yeah, I totally get it, and that's why the label is so nice, as opposed to raw milk regulations. If they start, well, we'll let it, but here's what we're going to, it's got to be this. Before you know it, the cost of compliance just completely overrides. So the pet milk exemption has been a real good one.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, thank you again for taking the time. Love what you're doing. Follow along on all your books and all the podcasts you do, and just you've been an asset and made a massive impact in the world. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us in the Sowing Prosperity mission. If you like this content, like and subscribe, share with your friends. Be sure to check out sowingprosperity.com. Sign up for the email. We've got so much more work to do.